What is good stuff, family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's going on with the economic calendar thus far, as we just had CPI come out. And we have more data coming out for tomorrow. I'm going to talk about some new developments in terms of news involving Tesla as well, what my price predictions are for all these tickers, from Tesla to SPY to Nvidia, the QQQ, and etc. But before I break it these this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And don't forget about the Moomoo link. The offer ends very soon. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks. The offer ends in just a couple of days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, looking at Tesla, you guys can see that the trend on Tesla is looking bearish, as Tesla's making lower highs and lower lows, lower highs and lower lows consistently. But the thing about Tesla that's worth noting is that we did see buyers step in at the very end and get this thing to close above 184. So there is a chance that Tesla could try to get a little rebound, get some sideways price action up here before we do end up going lower. So although the trend is looking bearish, we might see an attempt to rebound just temporarily as the buyers are trying to defend the stock. And I think there's a very good chance that could happen. So I'm going to break down how this could end up panning out for tomorrow, give you guys some predictions and such over the next couple of minutes. But I first want to go over some economic data and then kind of give you guys like a recap of CPI and talk about the new pieces of news about Tesla. So CPI came out in the morning today. We got a 3.1% year over year CPI. This was actually on the higher end of the forecast at 3.1%. Inflation month over month was expected to be 0.3%. That is slightly above expectations. Excuse me, guys, I apologize. Core CPI year over year was expected to be at 3.7%, but we got 3.9%. And then we also got core CPI month over month at 0.4% above expectations. So overall, I just want to make it clear that CPI was hotter than expected for the most part. We saw a slight increase in core CPI despite all items being kind of close. And that's not the best of news. Now, for tomorrow, the market has a quiet day to kind of take this in because we mainly just have some Fed speakers. But what the Fed speakers say could change how things end up moving. So we want to be paying attention to them, especially the speakers for tomorrow. We have a bunch of speakers. We have our first one at about 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then we have another one coming out later on. So I'll be watching to see how this affects us. There's not really much else data that's coming out. Here's the charts for CPI. You guys could see when you include food and energy, CPI actually went down because those would bring it down overall. But that's actually just on a like relative to the previous report. But if you look at CPI, if you exclude like food and energy, it actually went up. The purple line went up here for core CPI, and that is not the best of news. Because there's been some data that's suggesting that CPI still has some increases here and there, that is a little bit negative for the markets, and this could lead to more potential downsides. So this is what's leading to some fear. So you want to be very careful. Now, on top of this, when it comes to the way the Fed has been pricing things in, I just want to remind you all that we had an 85% chance of the Fed pausing. It's gone up to 91.5%. Basically, there's a 91.5% chance that the Fed is going to keep the rate the same, not really cut or not really raise rates during the next March FOMC meeting. We know the Fed is going to cut soon. We just don't know if it's going to be in May, June, July. We're still yet to figure that out. Now, there's an 8.5% chance the Fed does give us a cut. That is still very unlikely for the month of March. When it comes to big earnings that just came out, Airbnb, Upstart, and just a couple of others had their reports. Tomorrow morning, we have Barrick, not to mention CME Group and Sony. And then for Thursday, we have Coinbase, Roku, and DraftKings all coming out. But here's the very important ones, at least for right now. Airbnb had pretty decent earnings. They posted $2.22 billion revenue, beating estimates, and they're saying that guest demand is growing. We had an optimistic forecast for the first quarter, but don't forget that looking at the other pieces of that, the EPS was a 55-cent loss, which is not immediately clear, and it's not really clear if that's comparable to the 62-cent profit estimate. But overall, I would say earnings have been quite decent for them. Revenue was up 17%. Their guidance was quite decent, and overall, like I said before, they're saying that the guest demand is still strong. So that's looking decent overall. But don't forget about Upstart. Their earnings were not as great. They had mixed year-end results, but their guidance was not the strongest. Q4 total revenue was about $140 million, a 4% decrease from Q4 of 2022. The net loss improved slightly to about 42 million. But besides that, everything else is essentially close to expectations. But what did concern investors is when you go down here looking ahead, their revenue is not the best, and they're also talking about a contribution margin of about 61%, with the loss approximately at about 25 million. So that's not the best of things right now. I would just say that that's what led to this little sell-off right here with very, very mixed results. And the challenging lending environment is making things harder for them. So that's worth noting. That's why we saw the share prices sink. What's going on with Tesla? We're seeing some news coming out that Tesla's moving the Giga Texas outbound lots a little bit to a larger area. And this is very important because as output is increasing, if inventories continue to go up, and with this potentially happening, they had a tendency of hauling trucks to pick up the newly produced vehicles brought to the new factory, but they have more and more lots just in case when production goes up. Now, this is going to be very helpful when they start mass producing Cybertrucks and such. So it's very interesting to see. You guys can see the new lot right over here, and they're trying to get rid of the old outbound for the past 2 years, and they're trying to actually improve the facilities. So that's what they're trying to do. Pretty decent overall. This could help them. This could incentivize them to get more production, get production up there since they have like a lot more space, and then that's going to help them get more sales, if anything. On top of this, volume was about 86.6 million. Average volume was about 113 million. It's a little bit below average volume. Share price was down 2%, but the short volume has been going up just slightly. It's about 49%. Everything else is the same in terms of analyst ratings, but the price price ratio is dropping again, kind of low because Tesla's looking a little bit weaker than before. Not the best of news. Tuesdays tend to be green about 51% of the time, so it's not much of a change. But watch for volatility at 11 and 12 p.m. or 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, not to mention 2 p.m. And then on top of this, financial estimates remain the same. So with that being said, now I just want to break down some important metrics in terms of Tesla's share price. I want to talk about something very interesting. So the market was quite bearish today. We got this big sell-off, but then at the very end of the day, the bulls returned for the last 30 minutes to try to push us up higher, and they actually managed to close Tesla above 184. Now, Tesla's trend, if you look at the trend, is looking bearish. Tesla looks like it's going to continue to sink. But I think what could end up happening is as we saw buyers step in at the end of the day today, they might try to defend Tesla temporarily in the morning, and we could see Tesla attempt to try to get above 184. If we do hold above this, we could be looking for Tesla might start off a little bit low, and we might try to attempt to rebound a little bit, try to retest and grab liquidity up here around 186. And I think we might just see a lot of sideways price action after that as the bulls and bears kind of fight each other out. And at the very end of the day, that's going to determine which way Tesla goes. But if we break 186, watch for 188. And if we lose 184, watch support at 182. If we lose that, 180 is going to be our next target. Could Tesla sink lower? It sure can, but we might see a little attempts to rebound first beforehand, then some sideways price action. Then we'll have to see which way it breaks. But just to be safe, make sure you watch your levels because you'll know which way this thing is headed once you see an idea of the price action and which way it's looking. So for now, watch your ranges very carefully. We'll see which way Tesla goes. I think there might be an attempt by bulls to bring it up higher before it trades sideways within a range. Then we'll see what happens after that. Then on top of that, when it comes to SPY overall has been on a slight downtrend, right? Which you guys can see it's been downtrending pretty hard, but it dropped really hard with no sort of bounce. So it makes me a little curious if we're going to see some kind of rebound right now, especially because at the very end of the day, the bulls defended and got this thing back above 494. So we have a potential inverse head and shoulders like structure. But in order for this to rebound, first we have to hold 494 tomorrow. My guts tells me that we might see an attempt to try to get back up to 496, but we have to wait and see how it reacts to that just to be safe. If we hold above 496 or even close above it, we have potential to get very close to 500 to fill this imbalance. If we fail to do so and come back down, we reject. Watch 494. If we lose that, a bigger drop is going to be coming back down to 492 and these lows back down here. If we lose the low of the day, 489 is a real possibility. But because we closed above 494, there is potential for this to actually come back up. There is potential for it to do so. My prediction is I think we might see this start a little lower and we might see some buyers try to push it to 496 and we'll have to see what happens after that. It might range trade for a bit, but then we'll see an attempt at the very end of the day to try to break that. We'll see if the bulls are strong enough. They might not be, they may be. We'll just have to wait and see. So look for a little drop, then a rebound and sideways price action tomorrow. On the QQQ, I think the same thing is going to happen. One could argue we have kind of like an inverse head and shoulders. That's like left shoulder here, the head forming. So we might get a little rejection when we open. And then you're going to be watching to see if we can try to break 430. If we break 430, a bigger push could come to 432. But if we end up breaking down, watch 427. If we lose that, 425 is going to be retested, then 423.8. My prediction is with this left shoulder here and this head down here, we might see the QQQ kind of like come back down to about 427, then bounce and try to push back up towards this imbalance. There's a very good chance it's going to do something like that. In order for this to play out, we have to see if the buyers could try to get this thing above 430. There's a good chance they might try to defend it. It might come down, rebound, and then just trade sideways from there. I find that's to be the most likely possibility. So look for a little drop and a bounce and some sideways price action after that. On top of this, I think that Nvidia could lead the way because one thing that could help the market and the QQQ is the fact that Nvidia could be forming an inverse head and shoulders. Now, the issue with Nvidia is that we had this high here and we had a potential new highest, a lower high established, which shows the trend could be downwards, but there's no confirmation yet. So we just have to wait and see. If Nvidia tries to rebound, watch 730. If we break 730, we could try to retest this high. I'd be watching 736, which is where this imbalance is, followed by 740 if we do break 730. If we fail to do so, make sure you watch 715 as support. If we lose that, 707 could be coming. My gut is telling me this is looking like an inverse head and shoulders. Nvidia might come down right like this, and it might make an attempt to break out again. It might try to push to at least 730 plus. I could be wrong about that, but I think there's a very good chance it might attempt to push, and this might help the QQQ push a little bit higher. And the QQQ might push a little similarly with SPY, just temporarily, a temporary little bounce. I'm not saying it's going to last the next 4 weeks, the next 6 weeks. No, I think it may last, at least for tomorrow, just temporarily an attempt to push up, but we'll have to watch and see if the sellers could try to defend later on. But don't forget, there's not much data coming out, so it might not affect the markets as much, at least for tomorrow. For Apple, we've been talking about the head and shoulders. Remember, we talked about this left shoulder here, the head and the right shoulder, and look at how well this played out. It played out very, very beautifully. Now, the thing is, Apple has attempted to kind of bounce off 183.5. We're back at 185. Going to be looking for a drop tomorrow morning to see if we could form like a right shoulder. And if it does bounce off 184 or somewhere in the 184s again, look for a nice little rebound back up to about the 185s. So my guts tells me Apple might come down here and then try to rebound, and I'll be watching it carefully. We might just see a lot of sideways price action and consolidation in this range. So watch resistance at 185.5 and 186.5. Watch support at 184.25 if we lose 185 and 183.5. I think it might come down and then rebound and trade sideways up here in this range. That's what I'm seeing so far for Apple. Now for the VIX, I just want to mention that the VIX got a little breakout, but it came back down. So we'll be watching to see if we could try to hold above 15.75, or do we end up losing it and come down to this imbalance down here at 14.8? I'll be watching that as well. With that being said, I went over the majority of the tickers out there. Let's see what's going on with Rivian. If Rivian could break 15.48, watch for a test of 15.75, but then we'll see what happens after that. It could push a little higher than trade sideways, so I'd be watching that if we could break resistance. For SoFi, if SoFi could break 8.12, look for a push towards 8.23, then 8.3. The levels are kind of tight, but I'll be watching to see if we could achieve that. If we fail to break it, we're going to be coming back down to about 7.8, but watch and see. I think there's going to be an attempt to try to push for 8.12. If we break that, it could push a little higher, so watch that very carefully. The Russell 2000 is down badly. 4% in one day is crazy. If we try to rebound, we're going to be watching 196. If it breaks that, I think we could get very close to 198 or the 50 EMA. So watch that very carefully. For Microsoft, we came down pretty hard. We were at 420 during the pre-market yesterday. Now we're at 407. I think that if this is like a double bottom, we're going to be looking for an attempt to get back up to 410, then some sideways consolidation after that. So I'm going to be watching for that very carefully. For AMD, this has an inverse head and shoulders like structure and also like a bullish wedge. I think it might trade sideways tomorrow at 171 and then test 172. If it breaks that, we could rebound to 173.5, if not 175. So it could be a rebound coming. This does have potential to do so based off technicals, but just to be safe, we need confirmation of a break of 172. For the VIX, like I said before, it did attempt to rebound, but as you can see, it's kind of turning. If it comes down to about 15.12, the market could push a little bit, also at 14.25. So we'll have to see. But even if it does come down, it could try to bounce. So I'll be watching to see if that happens. It looks to me like it's going to drop a little bit before it tries to bounce again. So just wait and see just to be safe. For the dollar index, this thing pushed insanely hard, but now it's just trading sideways. If we lose 104.76, it's going to be sinking to 104.5. If we hold above it, it could rebound. So we'll just have to wait and see that test. That's going to be pivotal for the markets. For Coinbase, we're range bound. If we lose 136, we turn bearish. If we break 143, we turn bullish. I think it might test 143, forming a double bottom. And if it breaks that, we have this imbalance to fill all the way up towards 147. Now, Coinbase's earnings is just a couple of days away, so it could show some strength compared to the market. So it might try to push up. So watch to see if we break the 50 EMA. For Google, for Google to remain bearish, you want to see it basically lose 145 and sink to 144. To be bullish, you want to see it try to break the resistance, push up to 147.45. My gut tells me it's going to do that. I think 147 is coming, but I'm not sure if it's going to break that. It might just trade sideways because it looks very indecisive. Look for a push to 147.5 and sideways price action. I think that's most likely going to happen. For Amazon, same thing as Google, it might test 170 and trade sideways. It is kind of indecisive, so not really doing much. Same thing with Meta, kind of indecisive. This is not looking as strong. It kind of rejects off the 50 and 20 EMAs. So it might touch 462. I'm not sure it's going to hold it as well. It's looking a little bit weaker than like Amazon and the others out there. So the trend is looking bearish as well. So Meta is not looking that great. It could retest 462 and reject, guys. So be a little bit careful with Meta. With that being said, there is a chance the market may attempt to rebound a bit tomorrow, but this will depend on if the buyers could get SPY to hold 494. Can the buyers get our stocks to hold their favorite resistance levels, get above them? Can Tesla hold above 184? If we can do that, we could be looking for a little rebound. But I'm not saying it's going to last forever. It could just be a very temporary one if we are in a bigger downtrend. So just be very careful. Make sure you watch the resistance levels I called out. I am not saying the market's going to bounce and run forever. I'm just saying there might be an attempt for a little rebound tomorrow based off what we're seeing, based on what buyers are trying to do. So, with that being said, thank you all so much for listening. Please have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I'll most definitely see you guys on the next one. Thank you for listening. Have a great day and peace out.